Good afternoon. This is Campbell McCreary from Amvest Capital in New York City. Welcome to the Amvest Capital Inc. live webinar with Signature Resources Limited. Signature trades on the venture as SGU and as SGGTF on the OTCQB. Hope you enjoy today's program. It'll also be available in on-demand replay about an hour after we wrap up. Few housekeeping issues. You can ask questions of management. It's the thing that's highlighting right now, and we'll take them down and ask them in real time. Here are some important links and downloads, self-explanatory. Here's a feature. You can share this event right now in real time on social media or email it to a friend, and you can let them know that the link also works. About an hour and a half after we wrap up, it'll work for the on-demand replay, and you can get a copy of that at amvestcapital.com/replays. And then over here, don't fill this out to the end. You can share your feedback here, and that'll get back to management. Very pleased to have Amvest Capital, of course. This is a non-deal, totally general informational purposes only event, please note. Amvest, of course, is a New York-based specialist investment management corporate finance firm focused solely in the natural resource sector. And with that, very pleased to have with us Robert Vallis, Director, President, and CEO of the company, engineer by background, worked at a lot of the majors and Yamana and Barrick, so and some other places, and was integral part of the group working on the acquisition of Placer Dome back in the day. And see in the background we have Chairman Paolo Lestrito, but I think today's Robert's show. So with that, understand you're gonna pull out your fancy verify and share your screen, and you'll take us on a journey underground. So welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you, Campbell, and thank you everyone for joining. Assume you can see that, Campbell?
Yes. Okay.
I'm glad to be back. Forward-looking statements, no need to go through, but I'm sure everyone's familiar with them. As a recap, or an introduction rather, to those that are new to us, and a recap for those who are not, we are indeed a brownfield project, meaning that we have a project that has been advanced, has infrastructure in place, shaft, 3 sublevels, significant amounts of historic drilling, upwards of 28,000 meters, all within a pretty substantive land package, over 27,000 hectares, 32 kilometers in strike length. I should point out, and I get this question a lot, our project has never been brought into production. It had been brought to the precipice, but never did achieve that. Historically, the owners historically just simply ran out of money, and that is why we ended up with the claims we have and what we have. We're obviously standing from that on solid ground, a solid foundation, if you will, of significant ounces, 234,000 ounces historical at a grade of just under 7 grams, 6.87. Out of that, and we'll see that in a second, there's a significant high-grade component to this deposit and the known mineralization indeed. And with that, we've advanced it quite a bit in terms of forwarding, growing the land package, conducting a number of surveys, and having started drilling in the spring is now what has kicked off our growth phase. We drilled 3,200 meters in the winter, spring of this year. We've moved then into the summer, and into the early fall of a data collection in terms of ground and airborne surveys on our entire land package. And now we've just finally finished a lot of our mountain climbing in terms of positioning the company to be operating 24/7 with 2 drills, which is what we are doing. We've kicked off a 10,000 meter drill campaign that'll take us into the new year, fully funded to do that into the new year. With that as well, we've just released the very first results of that drilling, which we were proud to put out just yesterday. Exciting results. So we're looking forward to adding a lot more value on a pretty regular basis now as we continue nonstop. Our ultimate goal, obviously, is to get to a maiden resource, which we're targeting in late 2022. As a quick overview, we are located in Ontario, Canada, here in northwestern Ontario, just north of the prolific Red Lake District. From that, one can see that given where we are near the Manitoba border, we're fairly near the Monument Bay Project. It's about 8,200 kilometers north of us. Our nearest producing neighbor is the Musselwhite Mine to the southeast of us, and we are about 40 kilometers from the Manitoba border. But nevertheless, we are in this elephant country, this Tier 1 location just north of the Red Lake in the Red Lake Geologic District. From that, we do have quite a bit of infrastructure around us. Get a lot of questions about that. 2 modern airports on either side of us at our nearest neighbor First Nations communities, the Red Sucker Lake First Nation and Sachaco Lake First Nation on the Ontario side, both about 40 to 50 kilometers either way from us. And with that, there's permanent roads denoted in yellow, and then the blue and red denote seasonal roads right now that make it all the way near our site. But as we speak, these roads are being, at least on the Manitoba side, are being progressed into permanent roads all the way in the Red Sucker. So that project's underway. On the Ontario side, the Ontario government, in conjunction with the First Nations communities, are driving the high tension, high voltage power north along this blue line up into this entire region, inclusive of the Sachaco Lake First Nations. So we expect to see that come through over the next couple of years. Great timing, of course, for that substantive infrastructure to be around us by the time we're well through defining our resource and what we hope to be adding additional discoveries in our land package. Speaking of our land package, looking at it, this is massive. As I said, it's over 32 kilometers in strike length. We've added to this significantly earlier in the year, and there is a small patch of claims you see here that we do not own. However, the majority of our focus is towards the west, regardless of that, mineralogically, and I'll be getting into that shortly. The endowment that land package brings is substantive for sure. Zooming in closer, you can see the Lingman Lake that's just south of our project, that's within this purple claims box, our infrastructure here. You can see, but the Lingman Lake, just barely a kilometer south of us, ergo the name of the project, provides us with 365 access, and we do operate 24/7, 365 here as a fly-in, fly-out operation. Zooming in more closely now, we can really see where the mineralization is that's been discovered and what we're working on right now. You've got this dye-based dike post-mineralization feature that was cut through. To the east of it is where the majority of the existing 234 ounces are. These red lines denote the mineralized zones. They're anywhere from 2 to 20 meters thick, so quite substantive, very lenticular, steeply dipping. We'll see that in 3D in a moment. But what we are doing right now is extending these to depth. You may have seen the first wave of results that came out yesterday from that. So very encouraging, excellent intercepts, good thicknesses, good grades. Certainly the high grade continues to be with us. So we'll be pushing through that into November and towards the balance of the year. I'll talk more about what else we're doing in terms of drilling and targeting here in a moment. To the west of that dye-based dike feature, we were drilling in this region in the spring, conducted some step-out exploratory drilling along here to determine what is happening here geologically. With that, we were able to extend the west zone you see here in the northern part, and obviously as well through this denoted dotted line here, we've determined that this zone continues substantively to the west, and as well we've got more data indicating that I'll talk to you in a minute about. But here on the west where we did drill, we've determined that the geology is not exactly the same as what's on the east, interestingly. And so the geologists are taking more time to work towards understanding what that geology is to get us back to vectoring in our drilling and drilling with more focus and direction towards adding ounces as we progress. Excuse me. What you see here on the screen is the historical collection of what we have. The mineralization shown by these lenticular lenses, mineralized lenses. This peach-colored one we call the north zone, then there's central and south zones. West zone over here to the west. We are looking south in this view, obliquely. You can see the 28,000 meters of drilling that was done. It was just substantive and certainly brought to this level of definition for the purposes of moving into production. But the interesting thing and what really attracted me right from the beginning with this is the fact that this is high-grade mineralization, nearly 250,000 ounces, directly at surface and only delineated down so far to 180 meters depth. So it's just a substantive opportunity to grow a mineral resource rapidly, and that's why we're drilling, of course, right now to depth to expand these zones rapidly. But you can also see the historic infrastructure here, the shaft, 3 sublevels. Interesting to note that there were bulk samples taken, 400 or 500 pound bulk samples from these workings when they were accessible. They're not accessible right now, they're flooded. But historically, they were able to determine that the average grade was well over 19 grams per ton of those 4 500 pound bulk samples. And as well, you have another bulk sample that was taken from this this vertical raise, if you will. It's about 30 meters or 100 feet in height by about 3 feet in diameter. It graded along its total length 28 grams per ton. So significant showings of grade for sure in this, and it's certainly why we're most focused on moving forward with this. I'll skip the geology sections. We can look at that detail on our website at your leisure. Pointing out, of course, the high-grade component of this. There's nothing but pervasive high grade throughout the known mineralization that we have. That's another checkbox for me in terms of not only being at surface, not only being friendly in terms of its structure, lenticular, thick, but also high grade, prolific throughout. Our recent drilling to depth is indicating that as well. Without getting too much into it, the rock quality that we have here, is substantive in terms of the consistency of the rock type and what you expect to see in these mineralized zones. They're not variable or complicated. They're very competent, consistent rock with certainly, pervasive showing of high grade throughout the intercepts, as you can see just on this one I've picked out. So in total, that's a significant feature as well. Competent, sound rock, good distribution of grade across the thickness. More specifically now, where we are and what we're doing right now, we are actively drilling in these red panels you see here, which are just indicators or targets of where we're drilling to extend this mineralization, the known mineralization to the unknown, to depth. What we've recently mapped out is the high grade and how it exists in these mineralized zones. What you see here is how it exists in the north zone. These high grade plunges or corridors, if you will, are quite consistent but also pervasive. So from that, we're certainly using that along with the rest of the information we have to vector in and target our drilling more specifically to depth, so that we're extending not only the known mineralization but also intersecting and extending those high-grade mineralized corridors. I already mentioned that we continue to work on what's happening to depth on the west side, and we'll be moving towards the end of this year towards drilling into this region as well once more vectoring is determined from the data we've collected. And I should point out what we have done through the summer and into the early fall was run ground-based geophysics on our entire project. That really allowed us to get layers to a cake, if you will, of different types of data that look across our entire project and also down 500 meters in depth in 3D. So those layers of data, magnetic, and IP surveys, inverse polarization or resistivity, gives us a good understanding of what's happening with the rock structure to depth, and therefore where we should be targeting our drilling. Most recently from that, we just determined from the first phase of analysis from that, and put this out recently in a press release, that not only, has it given us good information about what's happening to the west, and also around where our existing mineralization is, denoted in this white box, but we've also determined that there's over 6 high potential targets now that we've identified from this round of geophysics. And from this plan view, you can see through these ovals showing where these lenticular features are. That is where our high probability targets are. So you can see there's a substantive opportunity from this data, suggesting that we can grow the scale of the Lingman Lake project quite substantively. I mean, even if we hit 50% of these targets, it would represent a significant upscale for Lingman Lake. So with that was the magnetic survey. Here we see the IP survey. It too is a green with the magnetic survey, which is what one would hope to see, indicating that indeed these areas are new areas of high probability targets for us to find new extensions and what we believe are new zones within and around the Lingman Lake package. So clearly what we're doing is drilling to depth right here where these green lenses are, which we just saw in 3D, pushing that to depth. Starting in November, we'll begin drilling exploratory fences, if you will, or lines of drill holes along and within these targets to begin to determine what they're telling us, how pervasive they are, what ones we should be working on and prioritizing. So an exciting period for us for now, indeed, and with this narrative switch from us moving from positioning and getting ready to operate, we are now fully de-risked, operating 24/7 with 2 drills. We have our own drills, our own drill crews, and we're fully stocked up in terms of consumables, something that puts us head and shoulders amongst a lot of our peers that are struggling with the supply chain challenges now, the price escalations, both with contractors and consumables. So we're in a very good position to just put our head down and keep delivering value. And as you saw yesterday from our press release, that's indeed what we've begun to do. There's 2 sides of our coin here in terms of strategy. The first is growing the Lingman Lake deposit you just saw. The second is focusing on our vast land package and its incredible potential for additional discovery. What you see on the screen, this amoeba-shaped thing, is the Lingman Lake greenstone belt, that all-important rock package, if you will, geologic environment, where, from a textbook perspective, it's where you expect to find, and indeed globally, where you do find high-grade, high-scale gold deposition. Particularly, you usually find that along the contact margin here of the greenstone environment, and certainly that is where Lingman Lake is, as you can see within this purple box, and even more specifically where there's deflections or bends in that contact. And that begins to speak to why our land package has grown to what it is. We now have over 90% of the entire Lingman Lake greenstone belt and that all-important contact margin. So with that, we have flown and completed airborne geophysics on the remainder and the totality of our land package, which, as I said at the beginning, is massive. The airborne geophysics you see already on the screen towards the top is what was flown in 2018, which I've spoken to and presented in the past. But for those that haven't heard me, this in itself has presented a significant potential indication of what's around us and in our land package, and that we've since grown. These ellipses with numbers and letters in them, it's a new ranking system we have. And you can see that we already have 7 high probability targets that we've identified. So within the next couple of weeks, towards the end of November, on the end of October, early November, you'll see the rest of this lit up with the geophysics as the geologists work to integrate it with the historic geophysics and provide visibility into the new targets, and from that, a new list of priorities. And the process is that we will be taking the top 3 targets regionally and focusing more on those in a more methodical way at the ground level. In addition to that work and survey work we did, we also ran a LiDAR survey on the entire property. That gives us a high visibility into the ground level, looking at what the geologic structure is that's outcropping on surface. So it gives our geologists that much more of a tool to work with to continue mapping the surface and understanding what's happening with the geology here. If we zoom in just quickly to the northwest quadrant of our land package, you'll see that we press released a couple of weeks back a significant anomaly that we found in the historical data that we have. And you can see that evident from the surface sampling that was done here. So the fact that it's up against this all-important contact boundary, right at a bend in it as well, the regional faulting as well there is an important structure to have. Those act as feeders typically for high-grade gold and gold depositions. And from that, you can see as well the scale of this anomaly, which is substantive. This is about 5 kilometers by almost 3 kilometers, this ellipse. So it's just massive. So you can see the incredible potential that we have in our land package. And this is just one target out of several that we'll be displaying shortly as that data comes out. But from that, our focus will be to prioritize those targets, our top 3, or if you will, get to going on the ground, getting more layers to the cake of data, geophysics, from that moving into test drilling and so forth, and then mix and repeat more or less down through our list. So 2 sides of the coin happening, developing and growing the Lingman Lake resource at a substantive rate now, as well as moving methodically but at an upscaled rate towards regional discovery. So we're quite busy, but as you can see, we've checked off a lot of boxes. And that brings to full circle now the fact that we've started our 10,000 meter drill campaign. We've stabilized our camp. We've collected a lot of key and core data that we needed to be driven by data to make decisions and vector in where we're drilling to maximize and optimize what we're doing, all towards that targeted resource towards the end of 2022. No need to go too much into it, but our team is world class. That is for sure. From our COO on down to our chairman, to our board. We've done a lot to improve things along the way. We have upscaled and improved our board to be a majority independent. And we've done a number of other things, as you can see in the previous slide. But the team is what really makes it work. And I have to say that this summer we did get sort of kicked in the knees from Mother Nature with the wildfires in our region that were pervasive throughout Western Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, down into the northern states bordering that area, all the way out to BC, down into California. You guys know this, but in Canada it was quite substantive, and for a time it did shut us down, and the ministry had things shut down as well. But we were able to get back in and claw back that lost time and get to drilling in mid-September, and now you're beginning to see the fruits bearing from that. Capital structure, just to wrap things up, you can see we're just nearly 340 million outstanding fully diluted shares. With that, we got about 83 million in warrants. Important to point out here that about 70 million of these at 10 cents are expiring in less than a year. 50% are expiring in early December this year. That's about 35 million, and another 35 million into next year. So we'll see with that a significant shift in our capital structure, and what we expect to be a lot more buoyancy in our share price. But combine that with where we are now, the value that we're adding and delivering almost on a daily basis now is creating wind in our sails that we're very optimistic about for sure. Our cash, this is a little dated. We're just under 3 million right now. We are, financed to see our way into early next year. And with that, we also have a rollback option on our shares that was voted upon in March of this year by our shareholders. That's really a tool a toolbox item for us to consider as we move forward as means to further optimize our capital structure, should it be deemed advantageous to do so. And that could be along the lines of a significant investor or investors at an institutional level, for an example, looking for a particular share structure there in terms of pricing. But other than that, we have been outperforming our peers, despite the fact that the tides have dropped, since about mid-year in the market in general. It's been tough in the gold market globally, as I'm sure you're well aware. But as you can see, we are on our way back to pulling the share price up, and with that, delivering value on a substantive basis. And that value, of course, connected to and rooted in the ounces that we are growing in Lingman Lake, and of course what we're journeying towards, which is more and further discoveries. That's really about it. Campbell, I guess over to you.
Yeah, sure. I had some questions in. Thank you very much. And again, very easy to send us questions, and we'll incorporate them into our Q&A. So you answered this almost at the beginning. This is not brownfields, but has definitely had work done on it. So kind of changing the question about what was the cutoff grade and all that. What were they thinking it was going to be at the time? So what was in the original plan?
Are you referring to cutoff grade? What did they think that was?
What did they think it was going to be?
Well, we have to frame that in a context of when. That infrastructure and effort was in the late 40s, early 50s. So back then, as you're probably aware, the discovery of Timmins and Kirkland Lake and development of projects there, they were really just focused on getting high-grade gold production on their way. They were not concerned about resources or cutoff grades or anything like that.
Yeah. What is the cost of drilling off an ounce? I guess would be cost of, let's say, cost of drilling per meter.
Yeah, good question. Our drilling right now, we've pushed that down substantively with our upgrades that we've taken on to lower our unit costs. We're at about 300 all in. If you take that down, we're actually somewhere around or just under $200 per meter direct cost for drilling. So we've done a great job of dropping that down as much as we can. Obviously, we're remote. Everything needs to be flown in. But the fact that we've gotten smarter about how we're doing things to capture an economy of scale, and benefit from the variable costs, we're in a good spot. That cost will come down the more we drill. Right now, we're drilling flat out with one drill and using the other drill as well in part. But we have the capacity to throttle that right up to 2 drills running, or even 3 or 4 drills running flat out. The more we do that, the more we offset the fixed costs of just operating the camp in general. And that in total lowers the total unit cost. So again, we're very well positioned. And as I've already mentioned, I'll repeat, in an excellent risk profile position. That's something I've paid a lot of attention to with our team, to keep our risk profile very low. We own our own drills. We have our own crews. We have our own consumables, and we're fully stocked for that to see through this entire 10,000 meter drill campaign.
Do you plan to drill throughout the winter? That answer would be yes.
Yes, we are 365 days a year, 24/7 now. That is the mountain we've climbed, the peak we've hit, and now what we're benefiting from.
Any plans for a metallurgical test program?
Yes, we're looking to get more meat around the bone, if you will, with the drilling we're doing now, these 10,000 meters. So it's likely at the end of this 10,000 meter campaign, which would bring us into next year, we'll likely be looking at a first sniff or a first pass of metallurgical response to what we have in terms of sampling.
Current capital burn rate and cash balance and drill budget.
Okay. Capital-wise, our capital burn rate is down to nothing now. We've essentially addressed the capitalization, which was about $1 to almost $1.5 million, to get us up to a level we need to be in terms of efficiency. That includes power generation, which drives the heating, the power, everything up there, fuel management, these things, second drill, these things. So we've optimized that and paid attention to really keeping our capital at an absolute minimum right now. The other part of that question was what?
Cost of, excuse me.
So Rob, can I jump in for a second here? Yeah. The nature of the question, yes. I think, the nature of the question, I think, is more along the lines of just the burn rate in general for the corporation. So based on where our balance sheet is at, we're around just shy of $3 million. We raised $3.5 million in July. We should, that amount, given our current burn rate in terms of drilling, the 10,000 meters, should take us into the early part of next year. In our view, the stock has been a little bit kneecapped as a result of people clipping the warrants, the 10-cent warrants. Those warrants expire on December, I believe, the 4th. So anything under 10 cents between now and kind of December 4th should do well. And the rotation in terms of news, we're less than 1,000 meters into the drill program, 10,000 meters fully funded, expected between now and the early part of next year. So should be news coming out, I think, Rob, you said every 3 weeks?
Every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, it's going to be fast and furious for sure from now on.
Okay. Another question that's come in. How much to dewater the underground?
Good question. We haven't spec'd that out, but from my experiences, it would be likely in the range of a couple million to do that, because it's not only just dropping pumps down and dewatering. There's stabilization work you have to do, rehab and things. So it's really an unknown until you know what you have. But it wouldn't be cheap to do, that's for sure. It's really something that is beyond the scope of what we're doing now, which is growing the resource rapidly. That's something you'd look at, I think, post-resource delineation into early stage project development and taking it to the next steps. Okay.
Status of the existing shaft, what's left of it?
As I just mentioned, it's flooded. The condition of it is unknown, but as I mentioned to you about the rock quality that we know of from the drilling, the rock is quite competent. So we feel that the underground workings are likely in good shape. They would need, of course, modern rehabilitation in terms of bolting, screening, these things, but for the most part, we think it's in good shape.
Is there a nearby mill, whatever nearby means? And
no.
Or would this project need a mill at some point down the way?
Well, that's a question that can't be answered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a question that can't be answered until we're farther down the road, metallurgically at least, let alone having the deposit further delineated in terms of its scale. What the scale presents would speak to what sort of infrastructure you'd need, but also the metallurgy would speak to what sort of configuration or flow sheet you'd need to deal with it. We know that there's a pretty decent sulfide content to this, as you expect to see in high-grade gold deposition, particularly underground hard rock. And with that, one could assume that at least on one of the options for a flow chart would be sort of a flotation and perhaps a pyrite concentrate or something like that. But to be quite honest, that's conjecture. We just don't have the data yet. We need, as I said earlier, more meat around the bone to get more of a statistical representation of what we have.
Someone referred to a fire. Can you elaborate?
I spoke of that earlier. There was a substantive occurrence of regional forest fires in Western Ontario and throughout Manitoba, Saskatchewan, that entire region, as well as other parts of the country. It was substantive. It did encroach upon our property, but someone above was looking out for us. We didn't get hit with the fire itself, although the smoke was something that no one has ever seen before. Pilots and otherwise, when it's too thick to even fly through, you've got problems. So we were shut down in terms of health and safety reasons until early August, really. So the majority of July. That did slow down our geologic surveys and getting equipment to site to accelerate the upscale and upgrading of our site. So yeah, we had to really accelerate that throughout August to get to drilling in September, which we did. And again, it's just hats off to the team for achieving that.
Okay. Someone referred to a small claim in your property. Have you had any conversations with our owners?
We have had contact with them. We haven't had any conversations about anything other than an understanding of where they are and what their intentions are and what ours are, which are quite public. And that's really it.
And here's a question.
The only thing that I'll add to that, Campbell, is that that was a land package that was owned by a U.S. forestry group. We had originally reached out to them to try and to consolidate the land package before kind of Signature got on the map, so to speak. The group that eventually did acquire it, good on them. It's a good land package, but we have more than enough to, chew on the 90% of the greenstone that we own. And, again, not to throw stones, but what they paid for that postage stamp, if you kind of extrapolate the valuation, Signature, would be valued north of 75 million market cap.
Yeah, on a per hectare basis. Thanks for adding that, Paulo. Yeah, I mean, we did reach out and make best efforts to consolidate, but we weren't going to blow our brains out on pricing. We felt it was better to put that money into the ground with what we have.
Good. Here's a question I don't think you can or should answer, but people think like this, and so you can comment on the question or put it into other context. How many meters do you expect to drill before you'll entertain a buyout offer?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I can speak to, coming from the majors, of what interests a major. Anything from 1 million to 2 million ounces puts you firmly on the radar. 1 million gets you on the radar. 2 million makes you an acquisition target. So anywhere within that range is a logical target for us, obviously, or anyone. With the attributes that we have in our project: the high grade, near surface, the high potential regional package, as well as the other thing majors look at. They look for district level potential, the potential to put centralized infrastructure in and surround it with, mines, producing mines. That's the holy grail. That's what they look for. And in fact, that's what we're on our way to hopefully demonstrating with further discoveries in our land package, that we have that. So hopefully that paints a little clearer picture of our objectives.
Yeah. I'm going to pass it over to Adam, who can dig in a little more. Thank you.
Thank you, Campbell. Rob, I guess to continue on with the subject you were just talking about, sort of delineating a second resource. It looks like you guys have some initial surface targets north and west of your current resource. What's the timetable to get some targets firmed up and to drill your first hole there?
First half, Adam, just to clarify, we don't have a resource per se. It's not under modern compliance. We are working to shift it into that. It's a historical resource, but based on that and the collection of ounces that it presents, we are moving into drilling these new targets around Lingman Lake as early as November. I'm not sure if your question was referring to that or the regional targets.
The regional targets where you have
regional
the surface anomaly.
Yeah. The regional targets I indicated on a slide back, but I did move through it quickly, that our objective is to be commencing drilling on the top three, or one of the top three priority targets by early spring into the new year. That, of course, is dependent upon us getting through collecting the ground-based data, processing that, determining what it's telling us about those top three targets, where we should be moving to next in terms of test drilling. But that's the time frame.
And then getting back to the main focus, how much do you know about the historic mine plan as far as the mining rates that they were planning, the widths and the mining methods that they were planning on using, and considering what you know now and how some mining methods have changed, especially because you guys have competent rock. Maybe you guys can do more open stoping versus cut and fill if that was their original intention. What do you know about what the original plan was versus what you guys think you can do, or what, obviously there's no study, but what you naturally would do given what you know? Yeah.
Well, first, the historically, there isn't a lot. Their approach was really determine if it's there, and from that, bring in as much infrastructure as they could to process as much as they could from a cost perspective. There was no documentation in terms of the throughput capacity they were targeting. There were hints towards the scale of bits of equipment that did make its way in, and that's where they kind of ran out of money when they were mobilizing in mill parts. To suggest that they were anywhere from probably 200 to 500 tons a day, maybe more, was really impossible to tell. From that, it appears from the development they did do that they're looking at mechanized open stoping as their approach. It's just not narrow enough in what they've delineated and developed for anything that would be targeting, thinner zones like a cut and fill or something like that. That said, what we would consider, again, hypothetical given we're not there yet, but what we do know and what we do have, would probably approach this in a couple of ways. Number one is we'd have to do the trade-off on an open pit, a starter pit on what's at surface right now, down to 180 meters. That's an excellent opportunity for a low-cost development, high rate of return for a modern project like ours. And if you were to project what we have to depth and strike, in which we're certainly intending and expecting to do, then from the thicknesses we see, it would be likely a majority mechanized open stoping approach, long hole more or less. So that speaks to fairly low cost operation on a per ton basis. But it's not perfectly the same thickness everywhere. You're very rare to find that anywhere. So you get these pinches and swells in terms of going out to 20, 30 meters, and then coming into 5 or 3 meters. The 5 or 3 meters, 3 meters is about as narrow as you go with the mechanized open stoping, be it long hole, be it, retreat, open stoping, any number of those sort of mechanized methods. Any more narrow than that, you'd probably be looking at cut and fill or depending on how competent and deep it goes in terms of lenticular, maybe even Alimac, something I've had a lot of experience with the Hemlo operations I worked at. which reminds me a lot of that. I said that actually at the beginning of the webinar way back, that the lenticular nature of it, the thickness, thick going to fairly narrow, thick again, it opens a lot of doors for variability and what you can do from an engineering and extraction standpoint. But the most important thing is that it's speaking to low cost, high rate of return type of project.
Rob, can you remind me, did they, with all the old holes, did they sample the whole run, or they just sample the high grade zone?
No, they sampled the mineralization. So you're looking at about, and it's consistent with what we're doing now, which is about 40% of the hole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact,
so do you have?
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking about the potential for the starter pit. Is there going to be a lot of, potentially low grade or unknown because it's sitting in between the high grade zones and wasn't assayed?
Well, that is something to come. Absolutely. There is a lot that has been sampled in between the zones, but for the most part, it's fairly structurally controlled. And from that, yes, the trade-off study would have to take into account that if indeed that is where the resource model ends up in terms of where we end up with that, what we know about where the gold is in terms of low grade, high grade, grade shells, so to speak, then yeah, a study would determine what that sort of strip ratio might look like in terms of waste or the fact that you may not be able, you'd have to more or less be selective about it. And then there's areas you can't be selective. It's, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but I think it exemplifies that, yeah, you have to do the work before you can make an assumption about it. The best assumption we can make now that, doesn't represent an assumption that would cut corners in how you would do this, and that's something we wouldn't do, is that an open pit, starter pit is a high likelihood for a project like this.
Yeah.
Adam, I should point out too, I'm sorry, just to addend to that each hole that we drill, and it was exemplified by what you saw with historical drilling, each hole that we do drill intercepts more than one zone. So while that's 40% of a hole, we're getting multiple duty out of each hole, piercing multiple zones, so that's part of our vectoring and being intelligent about how we're vectoring in our drilling and how much bang for our buck we're getting from our drilling. So we're getting a lot of data collected in a short amount of time, essentially, by doing that.
What's your, conceptually here, I'm sure you've looked at the numbers, with an open pit, if you had a 1 gram cutoff or something like that, there, from what you're telling me, I'm hearing that there'd still be a lot of internal waste because there's a lot of dead rock in between all the juicy stuff.
Too early to say, Adam, to be quite, it's just too early to say. You can make inferences from what you see, but until the engineering's done, it's too early to say.
All right. Very good. Let me throw it back to Campbell in case there's further questions from the audience.
Thank you.
Okay, there is one that came in, and then I think we'll move to close. Have you recorded any surface outcrop mineralization as of yet?
Yes, we've begun that last spring. Prior to that, in 2018, upwards to 2020, they were doing surface sampling work around Lingman Lake. You saw historical surface sampling, test drilling, blast trenching work that I pointed to in the northwest quadrant of our land package, that anomaly I spoke of. That's about what we have to date. Part of our exploration and data collection, regional exploration, if you will, program moving forwards is to more extensively map in and around the Lingman Lake area, particularly now that we know we have new target zones, new extensions as well. More work to do to follow those up at surface, but also at surface on the high probability targets. I mentioned we have the LiDAR to our advantage to work with while the snow is down, but once that's up, teams will be in mapping and doing surface geochem work there as well.
Last question, when do you think you will need to raise more funds, especially with regards to the next drilling program?
Well, I said we're funded into the new year, so logically would be looking to keep the trains rolling well in and throughout next year. So there's opportunities to be looking at this more logically, somewhere towards late November into December, and then, sometime in the new year, perhaps in Q1, when we certainly have a view, and it's a strong view out there that markets, gold in particular, will be improving around that time. Paulo, do you want to add to that? Paulo's still on?
I think he logged out. Yeah.
Yep.
We're gonna wrap up now. Please share your feedback. That would be really cool. Fill it out now, and then you won't have to later. The management certainly appreciates, and the on-demand replay will be available about an hour after we wrap up, hour and a half, and you'll get it in an email, and you can also just go to amvestcapital.com/replays. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Rob, to close us. And may I suggest recapping kind of catalysts and news flow we're going to be expecting the next 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, thank you again, Campbell and Adam and everyone for joining. Again, as a high-grade exploration gold company here in Ontario, Canada, we are very focused now on delivering value on a quite a regular basis. So in terms of catalysts, you'll be seeing us continuing to move and drill out our mineralization, existing known mineralization to depth, as I've explained. But coming soon in November, we'll be switching to testing those nearby extensions and new targets as well. So we'll be looking for that to come out, exciting news from that, as well as continued drill results to depth. And in addition to all that, the next level of geophysics on what we have surveyed, that'll display and show things in 3D and to depth, and better demonstrate what our geologists are understanding in terms of the mineralization and structure moving to depth, and how that's assisting us to vector in and grow the resource. Those are the early stage catalysts. Beyond that, you'll also be seeing the regional geophysics come out, and the targeting from that we're going to be focusing on, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of ground surveys, next level work.
So I got to sum that up. You're in the drill, baby, drill stage. So that's
we are results. I encourage everyone to check out our press release that came out yesterday. If you didn't, that's really just the first volley of results that we're expecting to be pumping out quite regularly. Some excellent drill results.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and good night, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.